A special thank you to each of our subscribers who make this channel possible. Here's today's story. In a dramatic turn of events, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who once basked in the glow of a military victory over Iran, now finds himself in a precarious position as peace talks with Hamas stall yet again. Just 6 weeks after a significant military achievement that was hailed by both allies and rivals, Netanyahu's political capital appears to have evaporated, leaving him struggling to navigate the turbulent waters of a prolonged conflict in Gaza. The optimism surrounding Netanyahu's leadership seemed palpable after the June victory against Iran, which many believed would empower him to broker a truce in the Gaza Strip. However, the current state of negotiations indicates a regression to the status quo, reminiscent of 19 months ago, when previous attempts to secure a comprehensive deal faltered. The Israeli government's insistence on a one-time resolution rather than a phased approach has only exacerbated tensions, with both Hamas and Netanyahu's administration showing an unwillingness to make necessary compromises. Oren Setter, a former member of Israel's negotiation team, articulated the grim reality in a recent column, stating that as long as the current government remains unchanged, a comprehensive agreement is unlikely, and the return of hostages held by Hamas is in jeopardy. This sentiment resonates with many within Israel, where public frustration is mounting over the handling of the conflict and the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Gaza. As the situation deteriorates, international condemnation of Israel's blockade on Gaza has reached unprecedented levels. Aid agencies and foreign governments have pointed fingers at Israel for the escalating starvation crisis, prompting several long-standing allies to recognize Palestinian statehood or express intentions to do so. The U.S. political landscape is also shifting, with Democratic senators recently voting to block certain arms sales to Israel, highlighting a growing divide within American politics regarding the ongoing conflict. The internal dynamics within Israel are equally troubling. Domestic opposition to the war is at an all-time high, with increasing calls for diplomatic solutions to secure the release of hostages held by Hamas. The military's ability to sustain the conflict is under scrutiny, particularly as fatigue among reservists grows and concerns about mental health rise. Reports of suicides among reserve soldiers have prompted the military to establish a committee aimed at providing better support for those transitioning out of service. Michael Koplow, an analyst at the Israel Policy Forum, described the current situation as Israel facing an unprecedented crisis on multiple fronts: societal, military, diplomatic, and existential. The prolonged conflict has not only strained military resources, but also eroded Israel's standing internationally, particularly among European allies who are increasingly sympathetic to the Palestinian cause. The failure to capitalize on the leverage gained during the conflict with Iran is evident, as U.S. President Donald Trump, who initially supported Netanyahu's military actions, has not used his influence to encourage a resolution in Gaza. Analysts note that Trump's alignment with Netanyahu during the Iranian conflict could have been a pivotal moment to demand a cessation of hostilities in Gaza, but instead, the situation continues to drag on with no end in sight. Within Gaza, the humanitarian crisis has reached catastrophic levels. Despite recent decisions by Israel to allow more food into the region, daily reports of starvation persist. The new food distribution system, which requires civilians to cross military lines, has resulted in further violence, as Israeli soldiers have shot at civilians attempting to access aid. The desperation among Gazans has led to chaotic scenes, with civilians blocking and ransacking aid convoys in search of sustenance. The discontent among Israelis is palpable, with many citizens expressing concerns for the hostages and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. A group of former security chiefs, including high-ranking officials from the military and intelligence agencies, recently released a video urging an end to the war. They emphasized that while the conflict began as a defensive measure, it has now become prolonged and counterproductive, jeopardizing Israel's security and identity. Netanyahu remains steadfast in his assertion that the war's objectives have not yet been met, insisting that the fight will continue until Hamas is dismantled and all hostages are freed. However, critics argue that the continued conflict is doing little to harm Hamas, which is already significantly weakened, and poses greater risks to the hostages still in captivity. For nearly 18 months, Netanyahu has resisted calls to halt the war, fearing the impact on his coalition government, which includes far-right partners advocating for extreme measures in Gaza. The morale of Israel's military reservists is waning, with many reluctant to re-enter a conflict that has now become the longest high-intensity war in Israel's history. Even full-time soldiers are showing signs of battle fatigue, with incidents of refusal to serve on mental health grounds leading to public outcry and subsequent cancellations of military penalties. Amid these challenges, the Israeli government is also preoccupied with internal political maneuvers, including efforts to dismiss the Attorney General overseeing Netanyahu's corruption trial. Critics argue that these distractions reflect a prioritization of personal interests over national cohesion and strategic objectives. As tensions rise, the question remains, will Netanyahu be able to regain the political capital he once held? Or will the consequences of his decisions lead to further instability both within Israel and in its relations abroad? The coming weeks will be critical as the situation evolves, and the international community watches closely, hoping for a resolution that brings peace to a region long plagued by conflict. That's all for this story. We upload videos every day covering many different subjects, so hit that subscribe button to stay informed. Thanks for watching.